What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Real Motherfucking Soul back in the building, nah, nigga. And we're back with another absolute video. This time is Absolute Flash discovers Darkseid's powers, and it's by Comics Explained. Shout out to Comics Explained. Comics Explained and Comic Storian say it all the time. These niggas are the goats of the comic book storytelling. Like, they're actually the goats. Like, niggas deadass don't have to buy comics because of these niggas, bro. We just go watch them on YouTube. But let's get right into this video, bro. This should be a goodie. All his comic storytellings are goodies. So let's get right into this shit.
This is Rob, and we are back with the Absolute Flash. And what this does is this initially opens.
I'm not gonna lie, the Absolute Flash looks like a bitch.
Being offered the opportunity
he really
to
do.
The Rogues, but we need to provide some context here, because the idea of Wally tapping into the power of Darkseid, this is a crazy thing. So the first thing we have to do is jump back to Absolute Flash number 5, and while we don't necessarily have to go through the whole thing, that is a story that focuses on Wally West basically confronting Heatwave. That Heatwave was created in the same way that Wally.
What happened to Barry Allen though? Is Barry Allen not the Flash in this universe, or? I don't know, bro. Let me know down in the comment section if he's the Flash or if Wally West is the new Flash or some shit.
Was at Project Olympus. Barry Allen and Eleanor Thawne, who's been using people and so on and so forth. What's really important about this, and this is where things get kind of wonky, is there comes a point when Wally West makes physical contact with Heatwave, because Gorilla Grodd, who was originally one of the Rogues, or I guess a weapon of the Rogues, and has the same traditional powers as Grodd, right? The ability to read minds and create force fields and things like that. That he had advised Wally to touch Heatwave, right? To take his heat away. And when that happened, Wally was mentally transported to like a different location. It almost looked like a moon of some kind, ethereal dimension. And when that happened, a voice kept saying his name and a hand reached out of nowhere. Now, theories abound as to who this was, because at the end of issue number 5, one of the things that you learn here is that seemingly Eleanor Thawne has captured one or more White Martians, who is basically the main villain of the Absolute Martian Manhunter comic. Now, we don't know that for certain, and it's really just kind of theories that are going out there. But here's the crazy thing that happens. There comes a point when Wally West ends up shoplifting in a grocery store in order to feed himself, right? Because as most of you guys know, the Flash has an insanely fast metabolism, and Wally West, especially in the early days, from like Mike Baron and Messner Loebs going into Mark Waid's run of the Flash, had to eat food like a madman in order to keep his energy up. Ultimately, he's busted by the cops and basically taken to jail for shoplifting, but in the time that he's running around, somebody online made a really cool observation where they asked the question, has anyone ever noticed that when the Flash runs, the energy that he leaves behind, it looks like the energy that Darkseid fires off when he uses like his Omega Beams or Omega Sanction or something like that. So the current idea here is that the giant hand...
What? How is somebody online noticing that?
Sanction or something like that. So the current idea here is that the giant hand that Wally West saw was the hand of Darkseid, in the same way that we saw at the beginning of DC All-In number 1, when Darkseid had created the Absolute Universe. Literally, a hand coming up out of nowhere, just like the old school origin of the DC Universe, right? The hand of God creating the DC multiverse, which has been retconned over the years, right? Perpetua or Dr. Manhattan or whatever the case is. But Darkseid's hand now, when it comes to the Absolute Universe, people are saying that was Darkseid's hand that appeared to Wally and was trying to seize Wally. Now, we don't necessarily know either way, but there were a couple other developments here. For example, after Heatwave in Absolute Flash issue number 7, Wally had come face to face with the Weather Wizard and ultimately had to, knock that guy out, essentially. But the reason why this all comes to a head and why it is that he's offered the opportunity to join the Rogues and how it all ties into Darkseid proper comes by way of the Rogues essentially explaining to him that Eleanor Thawne now has Wally's father. The reason why that matters so much to the Rogues is because of the fact that literally Wally's dad had saved them on multiple occasions. It was kind of the way in which the Rogues unified and came together. So for her to kidnap Wally's dad isn't just like some kind of bartering chip that she can use against Wally. It's a personal affront to the Rogues. But more so than that, there's this point where...
Alright, before I even say anything, I have no idea what the fuck is going on. I'm not gonna lie, bro. I haven't been keeping up with the Flash's version of the of DCKO of the Absolute series, but if I'm not talking a lot, it's because I'm really trying to dissect and listen to what the fuck is going on. So, yeah.
Wally has a kind of flashback in a conversation that he had with Barry Allen. And Barry asked the question, do you know who Schwarzschild is? And Wally's just
See?
like, no, Allen.
I just missed the important Barry Allen, bro. I was just asking about this nigga. Where is this nigga at?
Flashback in a conversation that he had with Barry Allen. And Barry asked the question, do you know who Schwarzschild is? And Wally's just like, no, Dr. Allen, I don't know who that is. And Barry says, Schwarzschild provided the first exact solution to Einstein's gravitational field equations. He was brilliant, but that genius came at a cost. I think Schwarzschild was also damned. After serving on the front in World War I, he contracted a terrible illness, a disease that ate away at his skin. And Wally asks, why are you telling me this, Barry? And Barry says, because, Wally, there is a cost to everything, and I fear you've become damned too.
Damn.
So the crazy thing about this is that following that bit of a conversation, and we'll circle back around to that here in a minute, you end up with the Rogues offering Wally a chance to be on the team. And that's where you kind of get the explanation about his dad, because one of the things to keep in mind is that up until this point in time, the story around Wally West has really just been him fleeing Project Olympus with these new powers that he didn't fully understand. Barry Allen dying in the process.
Barry died?
The fact that Wally had siphoned off his life energy and quite literally killed him in the process, and then him just kind of being on the run, right? The Rogues go chasing after him because they're directed to by Eleanor Thawne. They bring Gorilla Grodd. That Grodd ends up becoming a friend of Wally, and now we're here. The Rogues have finally caught up to him. And so that's where Wally's just kind of like, okay, there's no way I'm going anywhere with you guys. You've been trying to hunt and kill me this entire time. And that's where Captain Boomerang, Digger Harkness, is just like, forget this kid, right? Like, we don't need this kid at all. We'll do it ourselves. And initially, Wally doesn't know what they're talking about. But that's when Captain Cold is just like, there's no way, right? He's coming with us. We owe it to Rudy. And so at that point,
Who the fuck is
Wally's
Rudy?
like, what do you mean, right? Didn't my dad send you? And that's where he's told, no, right? Things have gotten complicated. It seems your dad started asking the wrong questions about Project Olympus, and Thawne has him now. And we think that he's still alive. And that just hits Wally like a ton of bricks. Like, you think my dad's alive. Like, you don't know that he's alive, but you think he's alive. Facing the prospect that his father's been killed terrifies Wally, because throughout all of this, he and his dad have kind of had a rough history together. He does very much care about his dad, but like so many young people, he's just kind of caught up in himself. He doesn't know that the world exists outside of him. That's exacerbated by the fact that he's just suddenly been hit with all these powers. It's panic mode, right? Think of the concept of going through puberty amplified 1,000 times over, right? How chaotic would the inside of your brain be? And that's kind of how Wally is right now. It's a really cool twist on the character, and I love the idea. But that's where Captain Cold is just like, look, Wally, your dad and me, we go way back. He saved my ass more times than I can count. Thawne's been playing a game with all of us, your dad included. So we're gonna find him, and he'd want us to make sure that you are safe too. Now, that's also an important distinction. One of the things that we'd learned over the Absolute Flash comics, which it wasn't really like an on-the-nose, a front-facing thing. It was just kind of one of those background revelations that you just sort of picked up on casually as the comic unfolded, is that everyone really has been used by Eleanor Thawne. Now, a lot of that revelation came out before Absolute Evil, issue number 1. Absolute Evil was the one that literally confirmed Eleanor Thawne is just a straight-up villain. Up until that point, we didn't necessarily know. She shared the last name of Eobard Thawne. She was his granddaughter, so we didn't really know for sure if she was a straight-up bad guy. Bart Allen, for example, is descended from Eobard Thawne, and Bart Allen is one of the best Flash superheroes that exists out there. So it's not necessarily a guarantee that Thawne's descendant will be a villain. But it turns out it is, right? She is just a straight bad guy. And so she's just been manipulating everybody the entire time. And so Wally asked the question, right? How do I know this is not some kind of a trick? Now, fortunately for Wally, he's got Grodd, and Grodd can read minds. And so Wally just communicates telepathically with Grodd and asks him, Grodd, do we trust them? Right? Are they lying? And the response of Grodd, they are not lying. But we have to be careful. We can't just trust them blindly because they're not lying right now. Now, the other crazy thing that goes on here is that Trickster is actually actually a double agent. Because Wally asks, right, so then what's the move? Like, what are we doing? And that's where Digger Harkness is like, the move is we take the fight to Thawne. We kick her ass, find your dad, and put all this crazy stuff behind us. But Trickster, being a double agent, is watching all of them. And through the cameras that Trickster has in their helmet, Eleanor Thawne is watching all of them. So she knows exactly what they're going to do before they even do it. And it's so crazy because the reality here is she would have to be foolish not to send out a group like the Rogues, who really have a loyalty to Wally's dad, right, to Rudy, without having any kind of safeguards in place or any way to monitor them and to make sure that they're actually upholding their end of the bargain. It's just one of these concepts you don't really think about until suddenly you realize it's happening. And so that's where you switch over to Wally's dad, right? He's like, so you have Jesse in your pocket. Like, I never really trusted her, right? And that's where Eleanor's just like, Trickster is loyal to Project Olympus West. The others are deluded. I gave them everything. I made them into demigods, and still, they have some misguided devotion to you. I don't understand it. And that right there...
So is this nigga like a prisoner or not?
In a lot of ways, she ties into Eobard, right? Eobard Thawne, as awesome of a villain as he is, his weakness is his arrogance. His complete and total arrogance. And in fact, it's the idea of him messing with powers that he couldn't possibly comprehend that got him killed during the Button storyline in the main DC universe, which, kind of a fun fact, there is a reference to that in the Absolute Flash comics. There's a point where Eleanor Thawne is talking about how they unlocked a kind of portal, right, an energy source, and she refers to the idea as the fact that they found God. If you remember the Button, right, the Batman Flash crossover leading up to Doomsday Clock and the reveal of Dr. Manhattan, that Eobard Thawne had traced the Button to its source and then showed back up again in front of Batman Flash and just started screaming about how he found God, and then just disintegrated down into nothing. And like with the Button in his hand, it was like he found Dr. Manhattan, and Dr. Manhattan really helped Eobard Thawne to understand his place in the bigger picture. It was kind of nuts, but that's what I'm talking about here, right? That's the kind of arrogance that's shared between the Absolute Universe version of what will most likely be the Reverse Flash and the Reverse Flash as we know him in the main DC universe. But one of the things that Wally's dad says here, right, that Rudy says is, you made them into weapons, and now they're coming for you. And so Eleanor's just like, then let them come, right? I'm counting on it, right? The others will die, but your son is what we have been waiting for. And he asks her, like, what are you talking about? And she just says, he is the key, the link between us and our ultimate goal.
Barry Allen's sacrifice will not be in vain.
Now, here's what she's referring to, and here's how it all ties into Darkseid.
Yeah, what the fuck is she talking about?
From Absolute Evil is that everyone's basically been conducting experiments to learn the true source of everything. That Absolute Joker did exactly that. And there's a theory that Absolute Joker was just a regular guy. He wasn't even like a crazed clown or anything like that. The Absolute Universe equivalent of Joker being thrown into a vat of chemicals at Ace Chemical and then coming out with bleached skin and green hair and being psychotic, that was him unlocking basically the secrets of the universe, learning about Darkseid and his creation of the Absolute Universe. And after that, it drove Joker insane. And he basically became the version of the Joker that we see in the Absolute Universe.
I'm not gonna lie, that's crazy. That's actually crazy. That's insane. So Joker found out about what Darkseid was doing. He found out what Darkseid was doing, and that drove him to be insane and become this version of the Joker he is now. Before that, he was just a regular billionaire. That's actually insane. I'm not gonna lie, I gotta hear that again.
That the Absolute Universe equivalent of Joker being thrown into a vat of chemicals at Ace Chemical and then coming out with bleached skin and green hair and being psychotic, that was him unlocking basically the secrets of the universe, learning about Darkseid and his creation of the Absolute Universe.
That's
and
wild.
After that, it drove Joker insane, and he basically became the version of the Joker that we see in the Absolute Universe. Now, we don't know that. We don't have an origin comic for him yet, but that seems to be the case. It's one of the popular theories. But what he hit
Oh,
on
that's
is
such a
the
theory.
idea that that's what Eleanor Thawne is doing. That's seemingly what Ra's al Ghul is doing. Everybody's trying to find some way to discover the source of all creation, i.e. Darkseid. Martian Manhunter already found him. He already came face to face with Darkseid. We covered that in the Absolute Martian Manhunter comic. It was nuts. But the fact is, at this point, you switch over to the Rogues, right? And they ask the question, right? How far out are we, Digger? And Digger Harkness is like, I don't know, about 25 minutes. And so it's like, cool, we'll call in soon. And so at that point, Captain Cold's like, tell Eleanor we've got the kid and make her think everything is going according to plan. And that's what he says. And then we do what we were made to do, Digger. Infiltrate, extract, and get out. And Digger's just like, look, as long as we blow some stuff up, I don't really care what we do. Like, I just want to do that. I want to destroy some stuff, and I want to just kind of ruin Eleanor's day. But here's the crazy thing, is that in the midst of all of this, even some bickering that goes on between the Rogues, there's this point where Wally is kind of drawn to the side, right? Something catches his attention, and when he looks over, he just sees this kind of energy hole, right? Just right inside their little ship. And he just kind of starts walking over to it. And like Trickster's just like, Wally, like, are you okay? Like, what are you doing? And he's just like, do you guys see that? Right? And they're like, I mean, what's going on, kid? And this voice keeps emanating, right? It keeps saying Wally. And Wally's just like, I don't know. He's like, I mean, I see it, right? I have seen it. And he's like, I will see it. And at that point, he's suddenly met by all these illusions of himself, right? It's a version of him from a second ago. Do you guys see that? It's a version of him here in a second. I saw myself. I see me, right? He's literally experiencing multiple versions of himself within the span of a few seconds, all at one time. And they're all speaking at the same time, right? I saw myself. I saw me. Do you guys see that? I see it. I have seen it. I will see it. Literally, he's having a psychotic break because in this moment, his mind is experiencing multiple moments in time at the same time. He doesn't know how to process it. He's never experienced anything like that before. And so at that point, Wally just starts begging Grodd to make it stop, right? Like, you have to make this stop. And Grodd does, right? He just puts his head up to Wally West and just kind of brings Wally down. But again, look at the energy signature that he's leaving behind as he runs. It looks like the Omega Sanction of Darkseid. It looks like the form his Omega beams take whenever he fires them off, right? Jagged, ragged energy. Now, 9 times out of 10, the energy or the beams of Darkseid look really jagged and they look really crazy because he's moving them with his mind, right? That's why like they can go around things and all that kind of stuff. It's not like a linear beam like what Cyclops or Superman shoot out of their eyes. But the fact is, because he seems to be having some kind of crazy break, it's not really enough to like send everybody into a panic. It's just kind of like, all right, like, Wally, get it together, man. Like, you gotta hold it together. We are home. And so at that point, Captain Cold, having no clue that Eleanor Thawne already knows what they're gonna do, chimes in and he says, this is Captain Snart to Olympus Control. Tell Thawne we have the West Kid and we are inbound. Over. And at that point, like, no one answers. And so he's just like, is anybody there? Like, what the hell's going on? And at that point, Thawne chimes in and she was like, this is Thawne. Is Trickster there? And Trickster's just like, I'm here, Dr. Thawne. And at that point, Eleanor's like, excellent. Please secure the asset, Jesse. And Jesse just says, asset secured. Pops a bubble around Wally West. And at that point, Thawne's just like, goodbye, Captain. And detonates the entire ship. Blows the whole thing up. Right? And it's just like, wow, dude, it's kind of bonkers, right? Now, of course, because of the fact that Wally is stuck in a bubble with Trickster, they're fine.
What happened to his monkey?
Is that Grodd has created a bubble to protect everybody else. So none of them
that's tough.
die, which is kind of
that monkey's
amazing.
tough.
And so it's just kind of like the damn monkey, right? Like the monkey saved us. Now the problem with this is that Grodd starts passing out. It's a huge mental exertion for him to be able to create a force field that quickly and to hold it for that long. Because one of the things to keep in mind is that this is not Gorilla Grodd from the main DC universe where he's been using his powers for a really, really long time and is incredibly adept in keeping them going for a prolonged period of time. No, this Grodd is basically brand new, right? He hasn't really been around all that long. A few months, maybe a year or two. And so in the face of all of this, Captain Boomerang ends up creating boomerangs for everybody to attach to so they can just kind of glide back down to the surface. And then Lisa ends up going after Jesse, pissed off as hell that Jesse betrayed the team. And so in the middle of all of that, that's when you start to see the power of Wally. Now, one of the things that's also kind of been going on here, right, between the comics that we've covered and the ones that we've missed, is that Wally West is becoming a lot more confident in the use of his powers. He's been exploring them a lot more, as opposed to being afraid of them, right, being terrified of what he can do. It's been circumstances where he's like, well, then let's see what I can do, right? For example, in the instance when he faced off against Weather Wizard, he was absorbing the lightning that Weather Wizard was firing down on him, which was amplifying his power, and it was actually satiating his hunger. So he started realizing, I can use this as an energy source, right? Things go sideways, run into a lightning storm, and everything will be okay. But that's why he just momentarily lashes out, pops the bubble of the trickster, and where Jesse initially tries to get back up, right, Lisa brings her down and just kind of crushes this girl. And so, at least for the moment, they're all allies now, with the mutual goal of taking out Eleanor Thawne. And so at that point, you switch back over to Eleanor, and you switch back over to Rudy. And that's where Rudy's just kind of like, okay, like, stop this, Eleanor. He's just a boy. And Eleanor's like, just a boy? Please, Colonel, right? You know as well as I do, Wally has become something more. Your son is the missing link between all my grandfather's work and all of Barry Allen's too. And she asked, right, do you know that having Barry befriend your son was my idea? That's how far back her manipulations go. And even further, right, we knew that when she seemingly first encountered Barry Allen. We weren't 100% sure. It seemed like she was really approaching him more as like a benefactor, right? Like, I can help you achieve your life's work more than anything else. But as time began to progress, and Barry was just like, when do we actually go to the portal? When do we actually conduct experiments? And she was always keeping him at bay. Well, we will, right? As soon as we run some more tests, we will. That's when you started to catch up on the fact that she's pretty sketchy and something's going on here, right? But that's where Rudy's just kind of like, what are you saying, right? Like, you manipulated Barry into befriending my son. And that's where she's like, yeah, right? Poor Barry, so naive. I told him the boy needed guidance, showed promise. Barry never would have exposed Wally to any of this if I hadn't played on his pathetic, altruistic nature. And so at that point, Rudy's just like, so then what are you saying? Like, what did you do? And Eleanor's just like, I knew the process would need a sacrifice. It was meant to be Barry Allen, but your son changed that. And she says, this is what Olympus has all been about. Barry Allen and I built a doorway, and Wally is the key to opening it. And seemingly, this doorway leads to Darkseid. And
that's OD. I'm not gonna lie, bro. That's OD.
It's a crazy thing, because in traditional mythos, right, when it comes to the Flash, they tap into the Speed Force. Every speedster taps into the Speed Force. They do it in different ways, right? You know, Jay Garrick was exposed to chemicals that allowed him to access the Speed Force. Barry Allen quite literally made it as he used it, which is kind of wonky if you can wrap your head around that. Johnny Quick, right, he uses a mathematical proof. Max Mercury gained his ability to access the Speed Force from a shaman. But the reality here is that while Grant Morrison's Multiversity establishes that the Speed Force is a multiversal thing, and every speedster across the multiverse taps into it, even the Flash, as he exists right now in the main DC universe, is accessing the Speed Force for his powers. Seemingly, in the Absolute Universe, Darkseid is, and Darkseid is all. And so every form of energy that is used by any metahuman out there, whether they're granted powers or otherwise, seems to originate from Darkseid. It's one of the things that we talked about in the Absolute Green Lantern, Absolute Superman, and it's one of the things that we're talking about here. All roads lead to him. So the question has to be asked here, what's on the other side of that portal? And what happens when Eleanor Thawne is stupid enough to open it? Well, we'll find out in the next video, guys, hopefully.
That's crazy.
With that being said, we're going to bring this to an end because, as I understand it, the leaks that have come out for the next Absolute Flash will give us the Absolute Reverse Flash. And I gotta say, man, I am so excited.
Crazy.
I am so excited.
All right, yeah, that's it for that video. Let me know down in the comment section what y'all think is on the other side of that portal that this bitch is trying to open up. But like, comment, subscribe, and I'm out.